You're likely here because you want to understand more about a recent event, something deeply disturbing that's really shaken people up.
That's right. Today we're doing a deep dive into the horrifying discoveries made at Rancho Isaguirre in Tuchitlan, Jalisco, Mexico, and specifically into the tragic case of Merari García Mejía.
And for this exploration, we've gathered information from various sources, pulling together a detailed account of what happened.
Our goal here is to really unpack the crucial details, map out the sequence of events, and try to grasp the wider implications of this tragedy, going beyond just the initial headlines.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, with Merari herself.
Merari García Mejía. She was a 20-year-old mother from Zapopan, Jalisco. Like so many young people, she was just trying to build a better life for herself and her child.
And her background is relevant too, right? She was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. Her main drive, her motivation for finding work, was her little one.
Exactly, and she saw this job offer online. It looked perfect, almost too perfect. Private security guard, really high pay compared to the minimum wage, plus they offered lodging and food.
Sounds tempting, but also maybe suspicious.
Yeah, her sister Ruby thought so too. She warned Merari, said it seemed shady, maybe a scam, but Merari felt the pressure, needing to provide for her son. She decided to go for it.
So, May 20th, 2024. That's the key date. She left her baby with her mother.
Said goodbye to the baby's father, told him she'd be back soon, and then got into an app-based taxi.
And right around then, feeling hopeful, she posted a photo and a couple of videos on her social media.
Which tragically turned out to be the last images her family would ever see of her.
After that, silence. Her phone was off, no replies to messages, calls went unanswered. Completely out of character for her.
Yeah, the worry just started mounting, especially when she didn't come back for her child as planned.
Her mother filed a missing person report. A bulletin, a ficha de búsqueda, was issued, but the initial police work was, well, slow, bureaucratic.
It took months, actually, for the cyber police to trace her phone's last signal. It pinged at a bus station in Guadalajara on the very day she disappeared.
And that kind of delay. It's unfortunately a common criticism, isn't it? Lack of resources, maybe lack of priority in these cases sometimes.
Definitely. So months passed, no word on Merari. And then March 2025. A truly horrific discovery hundreds of kilometers away at a ranch in Tuchitlan. This wasn't just alarming for Merari's family, it shocked the entire country.
Right, and this discovery wasn't initially made by the authorities, was it?
No. With the growing crisis of disappearances and what many saw as official inaction, citizen collectives started forming. People searching for their own loved ones, learning excavation techniques, how to find clues.
These are the search collectives, or colectivos de búsqueda.
Exactly. And early in 2025, one of these groups, the Guerreros Buscadores de Jalisco, the warrior searchers of Jalisco, got anonymous tips. Repeated tips, pointing them towards this place, Rancho Isaguirre.
The tips suggested criminal activity there, that they might find remains.
Yes. And the collective also knew about an incident back in September 2024 at that same ranch. A confrontation between the National Guard and the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG.
Right, I remember hearing about that. There were arrests, some people rescued, but also one body found.
Correct. But the follow-up investigation by the Jalisco Prosecutor's Office, well, it didn't really yield any significant details about what was truly going on at the ranch. It just sort of fizzled out publicly.
So the Guerreros Buscadores decided to check it out themselves.
They did. They arrived on March 5th, 2025. And the shocking thing was, the ranch wasn't secured. No police tape, no guards, nothing. It was as if that prior investigation hadn't happened or hadn't taken the place seriously.
Wow. Despite the obvious danger, they went in.
They felt they had to. The ranch was deserted when they got there, but what they found inside, it was worse than anyone could have imagined.
What did they find initially?
Well, pretty quickly they saw several basic buildings, 3 main warehouses, and inside, an alarming amount of spent bullet casing is just scattered on the floor. Metal rings like restraints and weapon magazines.
Just debris from violence.
But then, maybe the most disturbing thing, huge piles of personal belongings. Shoes, backpacks, clothes, letters, even notebooks with names written in them.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Just piles of people's lives.
Yeah.
You mentioned comparisons we're drawn to
the concentration camps in Nazi Germany. That image of collected belongings representing stolen lives, each item, like Merari's story, just abruptly cut short. It's chilling.
And they found other things suggesting what the ranch was used for.
Yeah, they identified what looked like tactical training circuits, areas for physical conditioning.
Yeah.
It started to paint a picture of the ranch's real purpose. But the worst confirmation was yet to come.
What was that?
One of the collective members noticed disturbed earth, something not right with the ground, started digging, and found charred bone fragments. They kept searching, found a total of 6 different spots across the ranch with human remains, buried, covered in ash and dirt. It was clear bodies had been burned, incinerated, and then hidden meticulously.
So the conclusion was inescapable.
Absolutely. Rancho Isaguirre wasn't just a holding or recruitment center for the Jalisco New Generation cartel, it was an extermination site.
And the guerrillas buscadores, they documented all of this.
Meticulously. They took photos, videos, and shared them online. The reaction across Mexico was immediate. Shock, horror, outrage.
And this is how Merari's family found out.
Yes. Her sister, Ruby, saw the live broadcast from the ranch. She recognized several items shown, but the absolute confirmation came when she saw a Jehovah's Witness Bible, identical to the one her mother had given Merari.
Oh, heartbreaking. That specific personal connection.
There was no doubt left. Her sister had been in that horrific place.
The public outcry must have been immense.
It was. It forced the authorities to react. President Claudia Sheinbaum made a public statement calling the images devastating, stressing the need for a thorough, transparent investigation. Even the UN called for impartial probes.
But the official response wasn't straightforward, was it? There was controversy.
Right. The Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office, despite their previous inaction, announced they were resuming the investigation. But they also denied the existence of crematorium ovens at the ranch, even while confirming hundreds of personal items were found.
Denying the ovens. But the search collective found evidence of incineration.
Exactly. The state prosecutor insisted they'd done a thorough search back in September, using excavators, soil probes, canine units.
But the search collectives refuted that.
Completely. They said the site wasn't even properly cordoned off back then, let alone subjected to that kind of search. It raised serious questions about the initial investigation, or lack thereof.
So what about these crematoriums? What were they actually?
The families and searchers clarified they weren't industrial ovens. They were brick structures, seemingly built specifically to burn bodies. And right near them, they found common graves filled with ash and partially burned human remains.
Just brutal. The inefficiency, or perhaps something worse, from the state authorities seems clear.
It seemed that way to many, including the president. Sheinbaum ordered the Federal Prosecutor's Office, the FGR, to take over the investigation entirely.
Which caused friction.
Oh, yeah. Tension between state and federal authorities flared up. The Attorney General, Alejandro Gertz Manero, publicly questioned how local authorities could not have known what was happening at the ranch. The state officials defended their actions, naturally.
So the federal authorities moved in.
Yes. They cordoned off the ranch properly this time, but also barred the search collectives from entering. That move drew criticism. People worried about a lack of transparency.
Understandable, given the circumstances. What did the federal investigation turn up?
They set up an operations base, a new excavation plan. Their findings largely confirmed the collective's discoveries: notebooks with nicknames, the Bible with the child's photos inside, IDs, medications, hundreds more personal items, and around 100 bullet casings.
Anything else stand out?
One particularly poignant find was a letter from a young man named Eduardo Olerman Nito to his girlfriend. A heartbreaking message, signed with the initials JGL.
JGL, any idea what that means?
It's widely assumed to stand for Joaquin Guzman Loera El Chapo, suggesting perhaps forced affiliation or the pervasive influence of cartel culture. The hopeful part is Eduardo actually survived. He was found later, though how he escaped remains unclear.
A small miracle amidst the horror. And they found out who owned the ranch originally.
An anonymous source revealed it originally belonged to a man named Genaro Ramirez, who was allegedly forced off his land by the cartel back in 2012.
So the cartel had been using it for years.
It seems so. The authorities released a public inventory of the found objects, hoping families of the missing could identify belongings. Survivor testimonies also started piecing together the cartel's modus operandi. The ranch's location was strategic, remote enough for concealment, but accessible enough for their purposes.
And those purposes.
Yeah.
The recruitment methods. Tell us about those. It sounds absolutely nightmarish.
It truly is. They used fake job ads on social media, just like the one Merari saw, promising good money, lodging, food, for security guard positions.
Preying on desperation.
Exactly. People would respond, get contacted quickly, told to meet at bus terminals in Guadalajara, and then they'd be transported to the ranch.
And once they arrived?
It was immediate dehumanization. Surrounded by armed men, blindfolded, stripped of their phones, IDs, clothes, all personal belongings. Everything confiscated, and they were assigned nicknames.
Erasing their identity. What were the conditions like?
Utterly inhumane, sleeping crammed together on the cold floor, maybe one ragged blanket to share among many. We know women were also lured there, and survivors reported horrific sexual violence against them.
And the training.
Forced training, weapons handling, extreme physical endurance tests, hand-to-hand combat, and the most brutal part, forcing prisoners to fight each other. To the death.
They forced them to kill each other.
Yes. Refusing to fight or showing any perceived weakness meant immediate execution.
Unimaginable cruelty.
And it didn't stop there. They were forced to do hard labor too, like digging the mass graves for those who died or were killed.
And the bodies. The incineration.
There was an area they apparently called the carniceria, the butcher shop, where bodies were dismembered before being burned in those makeshift crematoriums. Their chilling motto, according to survivors, was, "If there is no body, there is no crime."
Trying to erase every trace.
There are even horrifying accounts, reports from survivors, of recruits being forced to eat the remains of their dead comrades. Cannibalism is another tool of terror and control.
That's beyond comprehension. What happened to those who survived this ordeal?
Those who proved useful, who endured the brutality and showed loyalty or aptitude for violence, were sent out. As hitmen, as recruiters themselves to lure more victims, or as drug dealers, sent to territories the cartel controlled or was fighting for.
So it was a production line for disposable soldiers.
Essentially, yes. And there's another layering of horror. Reports suggest possible inhumane medical experiments on younger prisoners conducted in a separate house on the ranch.
Experiments? Like what?
Survivors describe some returning pale, weak, with abdominal bandages. Others just disappeared entirely. It's led to terrifying speculation about forced organ harvesting.
It's hard to process the sheer scale of the depravity.
And it's crucial to understand the CJNG's power isn't new. This ranch is just one manifestation. While many were tricked, some reports suggest a few recruits actually joined voluntarily, perhaps out of sheer economic desperation.
The CJNG is known for being incredibly powerful and violent, right?
One of the most dominant and brutal cartels in Mexico, yes. Their leader, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, El Mencho, has a multi-million-dollar bounty on his head from the U.S. government.
Did the cartel react to these discoveries?
They did. They released a defiant video, completely denying the crimes at Rancho Isaguirre, calling the search collectives liars. It's staggering, the audacity to deny such well-documented atrocities.
It speaks volumes about their sense of impunity, maybe?
Or their disregard for truth. Meanwhile, some arrests have been made in connection with the case individuals known by aliases like El Astra, April N., Gabriel N., Jose S., and authorities have taken down some fake job websites and profiles used for recruitment.
Have they determined how many victims there were at the ranch?
The preliminary estimate mentioned at least 15 victims, mostly young people aged 20-25, but that's unconfirmed. And given the state of the remains, the true number might be much higher, and identification is incredibly difficult.
So Rancho Isaguirre was basically a key part of the cartel's machine for expansion and control.
Yes, creating these dehumanized, violence-indoctrinated foot soldiers. The discovery brought immense collective grief across the country, but for some families of the missing, it also provided answers, however horrific.
And Merari's family.
Despite finding her Bible and other potential belongings, they still hold on to the hope of finding her alive. You can only imagine their anguish.
And the chilling question that hangs over all of this.
How many more? How many other Rancho Isaguirres are still out there, operating in secret? The investigation at this specific ranch is ongoing, the identification process painstaking.
It shines a light on the broader crisis, too. Over 120,000 missing persons officially listed in Mexico. Jalisco is one of the hardest hit states with at least 18,000 missing.
And you can understand why the search collectives deeply distrust the authorities. They feel the state allowed this place to operate for years, right under their noses, or perhaps with complicity.
The shockwaves, nationally and internationally, are still being felt. And families keep searching every single day, digging in clandestine grave sites, just looking for any trace. Thank you for walking us through this. It's incredibly difficult information, but so important to confront.
It really is. The events at Rancho Isaguirre are just such a raw, painful reminder of the reach and the sheer brutality of organized crime in Mexico.
And it forces us, doesn't it, to think hard about the systemic issues, the failures that allow these kinds of atrocities to happen and continue.
Absolutely. And maybe to leave you, the listener, with a final thought. When you consider the staggering number of disappearances across Mexico, what does the discovery of just one place like Rancho Isaguirre truly reveal about the devastating human cost of this ongoing conflict?
And what responsibility do the authorities, and maybe we as a society, bear in actually addressing this crisis head on?
It urges you to think about the individual stories, the people like Merari behind those staggering statistics, and the desperate, urgent need for justice, accountability, and fundamental change.